Hello everyone, welcome to the monthly current affairs series of Amrita IS, and today we are starting with the first session of international affairs. So today's in the first session we'll talk about the institution and initiative, and in the next session we'll talk about some country specific news and the bilateral news or some India specific news if that's there. For example, BIMSTEC. So we'll discuss BIMSTEC over in the next session. Chalo. So the first one is very important, that is Djibouti Code of Conduct, DCOC. So what's in the news? Because India has joined the Djibouti Code of Conduct. Okay, so from the name itself, there is a code of conduct. First of all, Djibouti is a place or a country in your Western Africa, Northwestern Africa. This is Djibouti, very famous because this is the military base for a lot of countries. For example, USA, and recently China has also established its military base in Djibouti. Okay, so what is this code of conduct relates to? This code of conduct is basically concerned with started with the repression of the piracy and the armed robbery against the ships in the Western Indian Ocean. Now, first, let's discuss the context in which we are talking about. We're talking about the context in which this Western Indian Ocean is. First of all, there is a lot of choke points. You can see this is a choke point. This is a choke point. This is Strait of Bab Mandab. This is the Strait of Hormuz. This is Strait of Bab Mandab. These are the choke points. Secondly, the countries which are there. For example, a lot of failed states are there. For example, your Somalia. Now, a lot of pirates of the Somalia, and because this place is a very important, this is Suez Canal, right? Suez Canal. So from Europe, anything from Mediterranean to Suez Canal entering into the Indian Ocean, it passes through this region. Plus, you have a lot of failed states such as Somalia. So you have a lot of pirates, and these are the attacks. You can see a lot of attacks on this Western Indian Ocean. So Western Indian Ocean is always being an area of an attack. So the ships needs to be protected, so-called. This is where India's role also coming, because India intends to be a net security provider. India wants itself to be the net security provider in this region. India wants to use this idea of Indian Ocean or Indo-Pacific, or India wants to establish Indian Ocean as its strategic backyard, isn't it? So in that context, this code of conduct was developed in 2009. It has 20 members which are part of it. We'll discuss it, 20 members. And it was established under the overarching umbrella of the IMO, that is International Maritime Organization, which itself is a specialized United Nations agency. Chalo. Now let us discuss something more than that. So we have established the context that this place is prone to a lot of piracy and a lot of attacks on the ships because of the failed state, because of the very significance of the area, because of passing from the choke points, Suez Canal, Indian Ocean, huge business, India, Southeast Asia, China, Japan, for example. So a lot of countries connected through this region. Now 20 countries which are part of the Djibouti Code of Conduct are these countries. So India is not a part of the Djibouti Code of Conduct. We'll see where India features in. So 20 countries from Egypt. So you can see this whole Africa, Northern and Western Africa. So Tanzania, Kenya, these countries. Then some countries in the near the your Gulf countries that are there. For example, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, UAE. Then some countries which are the Indian Ocean island nations, Maldives, Seychelles, and Vanilla Islands. These are there. So these are part of your Djibouti Code of Conduct. You don't have to remember the names of the countries. Okay? So 20 countries from Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, East Coast of Africa, and some island nations. What you need to remember that India is not a member country of it. India is an observer. So India recently joined as an observer. Apart from India, there are 5 countries: Japan, Norway, UK, and USA. So France is not there. China is not there. Very importantly, China is not there. Okay? So this is an important thing that we need to remember. Now very quickly. So in 2009, the idea was to have a code of conduct for against piracy and armed robbery. Then in 2017, with the Jeddah Amendment, it was upgraded and they have added a few more things. So they have, for example, earlier they were talking from only a narrow security perspective. Now they look at the security from a bigger perspective. For example, organized crime. So other illicit maritime activities such as human trafficking, illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. sustainable development in the maritime sector. That has become the agenda now. So obviously, from a negative idea to a very positive idea, they have evolved into overarching, working under the overarching umbrella of International Maritime Organization. Okay, from prelims perspective, this much is enough. From a mains perspective, this question can come, very important, and this question can come in overarching architecture of the Indo-Pacific. Now, this year they have already asked a question on the Indo-Pacific, so I don't expect any question again coming on this. But yes, the question can come with respect to India's role as a net security provider. Okay, right. Chalo. So let us very quickly discuss related to it. This International Maritime Organization, few things that you have to remember: established in 1948, headquartered in London. It is one of the specialized agencies. I already told you that make a list of the specialized agencies. There are around 17 specialized agencies of United Nations, such as World Bank, IMF. WTO is not a specialized agency of the IMF or of the United Nations, like that. So the idea of the IMO, from the name itself, International Maritime Organization. So what it will do? It will come up with some of the standards, some will come with a protocol, some of the regulations. This is the basic idea of the IMO. Let us discuss. So specialized agency of the United Nations, established in 1948. It's a global standard setting authority and providing the regulatory framework. Now, the organization itself does not have any enforcement power, not responsible for any enforcement, and it does not have any enforcement mechanism. It itself does not have any enforcement mechanisms. Okay? But it has, whenever it signs conventions, for example, within this organization, they sign conventions. For example, they come up with a, for example, particular convention. Let's say Marpol Convention is one of the convention under the organization. You don't have to remember this convention unless and until India has recently signed it or these conventions are in news. Now, for example, this Marpol Convention is one of the convention. Now, the countries, those who will sign this convention, there they will come up with the enforcement idea. Now, you have signed this convention. Now, you have to enforce it. That is the idea. Okay. So, IMO ka idea kya hai? That it's not an enforcement centric organization. Chalo. Understood? So, Djibouti Code of Conduct under the IMO, Djibouti Code of Conduct, India has joined as an observer state. Why? Under the overarching idea of the net security provider, Indo-Pacific as its strategic backyard, Indo-Pacific as a gaining currency in the international diplomacy. Chalo. The next one, that is International Criminal Court. Why it's in the news? It always remain in news every year for one reason or the other. This year it is in the news because now the ICC has decided to check the war against humanity or the war crimes conducted by the American soldiers while in Afghanistan. For example, US has been in Afghanistan from 2003. Somewhere we'll discuss this whole Afghanistan theory in detail, maybe next month, because we have to discuss Afghanistan story because some developments are there on that front as well. There we'll trace the original Taliban and we'll do the detailed things. Chalo. So US soldiers, ICC has come up with the idea that we need to look into the crimes, the alleged crimes which are committed by the US soldiers while being posted in Afghanistan. Now, obviously, who doesn't like it? USA. USA does not like it. How can they do so? So USA has done some sanctions against the officials, those who have started these orders. So this is why it's in the news. Donald Trump himself has intervened and he has said that this is not acceptable to us. It is hampering our sovereignty, our idea to the humanity and all these things. But overall, everyone, for example, those who believe in the global order don't like it. Blow to the global order. US decision has been criticized by UN, EU, 10 members of UNSC, including UK, France, and other international human rights organizations. Now, first, let us understand what this ICC is. Later on, when we'll read ICJ, I'm not comparing ICC and ICJ here. Later on, when we'll read ICJ, somewhere we will read. Then we will compare ICC to ICJ. Today, we need to focus only on the ICC, that is International Criminal Court. Chalo. So this is the context actually. So what is ICC? ICC is the first permanent treaty-based international organization which has come from the Rome Statute. What is this Rome Statute? Rome Statute, you can remember, such as a convention or an agreement which is being placed in 1998 and which has come into force in 2002. So the basic constitution, you can say, India has come up after this constitution has been laid out, Republic of India. Similarly, ICC has come up after this Rome Statute has been laid out. So under the Rome Statute, they've talked about the different things with respect to the International Criminal Court. So it has a territorial jurisdiction over the countries which is party to the Rome Statute. So if the country has accepted that, okay, theek hai, we will accept the ICC's jurisdiction, then that's fine. If the countries have agreed to this Rome Statute, then they will come under the jurisdiction of ICC. Now, next is, what is the relation with the United Nations? Relations with the United Nations is very important. It is an independent judicial body distinct from United Nations. That means United Nations has its own judicial body, that is ICJ, International Court of Justice. That is different. This is different from them. But yet both of them are international bodies, so both obviously cooperate. So it reports annually to the UNGA and has here the cases referred by the UNSC. For example, United Nations Security Councils provide its some cases. For example, let us prosecute this particular case, then they will go ahead and hear that particular case. That is International Criminal Court. Chalo, now let us see in detail. Having these kind of diagrams helps us to visualize the whole thing from a single snapshot. That is the idea. Chalo. So first of all, established under the Rome Statute in 1998, came into force in 2002. Then it's a permanent international court. More importantly, it investigates, prosecute and try the individuals, not countries. Now, if you remember ICJ, what we remember, Kulbhushan Yadav case. Now in that, the ICJ is referring the case not with respect to Kulbhushan Yadav. Kulbhushan Yadav is the subject of the thing, but the dispute is between India and Pakistan. Kulbhushan Yadav is not the party to it. He is one of the contexts in which India and Pakistan are fighting to each other. So the four cases they hear, that is crime, that is genocide if you committed, crime against humanity, war crimes and crimes of aggression. So crimes against genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes and crimes of aggression. Okay? More so, where it gets its cases. So one of the cases we have here, the UNSC has referred. Then member country can refer. For example, in my country, someone has committed crime against humanity. If I have agreed to the Rome Statute, I can say, okay, you do try this case. Then prosecutor, who is then ICC's chief prosecutor, they can suo moto take up the case. And this is where the USA's case lie. Okay, US का case यहाँ lie करता है. Because here the suo moto proceedings have been started with respect to Afghanistan. Now, obviously, it does not replace the national criminal laws. For example, we have the CRPC. It does not replace it, but rather it complements it. It complements it with regard to these ideas: genocide, crime against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of aggression. Now, location where it is situated. So it is situated in the Netherlands. So within Netherlands, you can say western city of Netherlands, that is The Hague. Within The Hague, you have it is known as the home of the international and arbitration. Why? Because all the three major bodies with respect to the international laws are present there, whether it be permanent court of arbitration, international court of justice, or international criminal court. We'll discuss all of them, not today, but over the period of time. For example, ICC today we have discussed. Permanent court of arbitration remains in news because of the South China Sea case, because it was the permanent court of arbitration which has said that the China does not have any historical claims over the 9-9. ICJ, we remember, ICJ remains in news because of Kulbhushan Yadav case, recent case with respect to the Myanmar, right? Where they have put the leading authority in the Myanmar under the scrutiny. So within the Netherlands, the westernmost city. What about India? India is not part of the Rome Statute. India has neither signed. India has neither signed भी नहीं किया है, और neither ratified the International Criminal Court. Okay? We have not done anything. Why is it so? We also have our own grounds. First argument. First of all, UNSC will refer the case to the ICC. That goes to show that you have placed UNSC over the ICC. Okay. Now ICC, when it works below the UNSC, or it is being alleged because of the political interference that is there. Okay. Now, for example, India is not part of Rome Statute, but UNSC refers a particular case. Let's say any officer in India who has done something in Kashmir, hypothetically. If they put that case, UNSC gives to the ICC, political interference cases. No, India does not like it. First case. So subordination status is not good. So it should be an independent body, not subordinate to UNSC. Or there should be clear-cut guidelines, or it should be subordinate, let's say, to UNGA, for example, not UNSC. Because in UNSC, you know that there is a monopoly of the P5 countries, including China. Then the blurred legal boundaries, where you will define that this crime is not crime against humanity and this crime is crime against humanity. For example, some rape case has happened. Is it a crime against humanity? Like that. So obviously there are some blurry boundaries. What will happen then? Obviously it will create some problem. For example, ICC will try to intervene in the cases where we will say, no, this is where our own criminal law will work. But the ICC will say, no, this is a crime against humanity, we will tackle it. Especially in the cases, for example, let's say the cases related to ASFA, Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Right? It remains in the news. And then narrow view purview. For example, India says that why you have not included the nuclear weapon, nuclear proliferation, terrorism, you have not included that against crime against humanity. This is the one of the arguments. Then lastly, what about the suo motu power, where the USA also has said that we don't like ICC. Now, India is supporting in the USA's stand. India is obviously saying, because they write the same argument, that because of the suo motu stand, our sovereignty is hampered and we cannot compromise our sovereignty. So these are the ideas against the ICC, why India has not been a party to it. Okay, understood? India is party to both ICJ and ICC. Oh, sorry, ICJ and Permanent Court of Arbitration. We are part of both, but we are not part of the ICC. Okay? Chalo. Next is PAGE, that is Partnership for Action on the Green Economy. What is this PAGE? So basically this was established in 2013. It remains in news because of something or the other. It was in the Rio Plus 20 summit. We'll discuss this in detail. So Rio Plus 20 summit has happened in 2013 and it was established then. From the name itself, Partnership for Actions on the Green Economy. So idea on the green economy, sustainable economy. For example, SDG 8, promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and private employment and decent work for all. So it brings together 5 United Nations agencies, UNEP, UNDP, ILO, UNIDO and United Nations Institute of Training and Research. So obviously the idea is the same. It will help the country's capacity building, training and all these things. The idea is to move towards the green economy. Now, where the origin lies. For example, last year we have discussed this diagram very beautifully, and this year we'll also try. Now, the Earth Summit has happened in 1992. What we say, Earth-shattering Earth Summit. It is also known as the Rio Summit. Very famous, 1992. Out of the Rio Summit, known as the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, UNCED, you have the 3 basic different outcomes have come. One is on the biodiversity. We'll discuss that in ecology over the period of time, or you can watch our June 20 session for biodiversity. But again, I will repeat it again somewhere. One was with respect to climate change, where we are entering into the Paris Agreement, recently Joe Biden case, right? And the third one is towards the sustainable development. And there they have signed this Agenda 21. Now within this Agenda 21, coming to it, so now we are discussing the realm of the sustainable development. Within sustainable development, very quickly, United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, 1992, then Agenda 21. Within the Agenda 21, after 10 years, they had one more summit that is known as Rio Plus 10. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to come to the page. So Rio Plus 10, that is known as the World Summit on the Sustainable Development. Okay, happened in Johannesburg. Then after 20 years, known as Rio Plus 20, 20 years from 1992. So in 2012, again in Rio they have met, that is United Nations Conference on the Sustainable Development. And in that they have come up with the idea of the page that will create this one partnership. Understood? So this is where the idea of the page is. That is partnership for the action on the green economy. So India is one of the partner countries in the page. Okay, out of the 20 countries, India is one of the partner countries, and this is why page is an important organization to cover. In 2080, UPSC has already asked one question on it. I've kept that question into the question category. So develop economy that is low carbon, resource incentive and equitable is proud to be partnered with 20 countries in their effort to economic reframing around the sustainability. Okay? Chalo. Next one is AWEB. What is AWEB? From the name itself, Association of the World Election Bodies. Association of the World Election Bodies. So obviously who will participate? Our Election Commission of India. So Election Commission of India has been the chair of the AWEB from 2019 to 2020. I have taught the same topic last year as well, right? So recently, that means last year, it was the last year's notes. For example, last year, it will know it won't be recently, it should be last year. Election Commission has hosted the 4th General Summit in Bangalore, right? And the headquarter of this AWEB is in South Korea and obviously in Secretariat in Seoul. Idea is obviously Association of the World Election Body. So what it will do? Obviously strengthening the election management. Now in the recent context, you can see how to do these in elections, especially in the challenging times of the COVID-19. And this is where the Election Commission of India has hosted this webinar on issues, challenges and protocols in conducting the elections during the COVID-19, sharing the country experiences. For example, many countries conducted their elections. For example, South Korea conducted its election. Some countries in Africa conducted an election. India conducted its election in Bihar and getting ready to conduct its election in the West Bengal as well. Okay, so this is where the news is. India took over as the AWEB chair for 2019 and 2021 term. So if you expect one question in the UPSC, the question can be AWEB is in the news. What is this? So they will say, okay, it is related to, let's say, cyber crime or something. No, it is related to the election and it is related to the democracy. Chalo. The next one, last one, that is minilateral. So it's been the news. For example, India, France and Australia hold their first trilateral dialogue. So they have discussed their first trilateral dialogue, and from there this term has come that we are witnessing the rise of the minilaterals. What are these minilaterals? Minilateral, multilateral, you can compare. For example, what is multilateral? Where a lot of countries come. For example, WTO is a multilateral platform. United Nations is a multilateral platform. Minilateral platforms such as India, France, Australia. For example, India, Australia, India, Japan, Australia, India, Jai. Right? Then you have the BBIN, for example. Right? Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal. You have Quad. So these now small organizations are coming up. For example, last time we have discussed supply chain resilient infrastructure, right? Initiative, sorry. Supply chain resilient initiative between Japan, Australia and India. So these are the things that we have discussed, or these are the patterns which can be found in the international diplomacy. Now in the place of the multilateral, when the multilaterals are facing a lot of challenges, you have the minilaterals are coming up. So it's a form of the multilateralism. Obviously it's a form of the multilateralism, miniature of it. It describes the diplomacy that is performed in the group of countries or an organization or entity international politics dealing with a specific issue or topic. For example, let's India, France and Australia, they have focused on the idea of the Indo-Pacific, right? So the idea is basically focused on the idea of security, maritime prosperity, and overall diplomacy, or you can say against China as well. They have decided that annually they will hold this dialogue. So priority trends and discussion on the priority challenges and trend of the multilateral institutions. Means these three will meet and they will discuss also that how this WTO or United Nations can be made more representative, maybe more inclusive, more adaptable to the changing realities. Okay? So remember, this is called the minilateral. So very quickly, the difference between minilateral and multilateral. So minilaterals are voluntary. These are many times legally binding. For example, WTO. Very comprehensive, inclusive, state-centric, multi-stakeholder, multi-level means apart from the state, other bodies can be there. For example, your academia, big industries. For example, in your IORA, right? In IORA, you have also the companies or private sector coming in. It's a bit informal, it's a more formal. It has a principle of non-discrimination. That means it's open to all, while the minilaterals have a restricted participation. For example, Quad. Obviously, they won't allow China in that particular organization. So this is the comparison between the minilateral and multilateral. And these are the minilaterals. So with this, we finish our session. Let us do the 5 questions that we do. The first one is, what is Antifa sometimes seen as news? Antifa is in news. What is this Antifa? Please pause this session and try to answer the question. What is Antifa sometimes seen in the news? Now, Antifa is in the news because of the, for example, on the 6th of January, 2021, the whatever happened in USA, everyone has saw, and so many newses have been there. Obviously, everyone has blamed Donald Trump, but Donald Trump has blamed whom? Antifa. So Antifa is basically anti-fascist political movement in the United Nations. Anti-fascist means basically people say that this Donald Trump is having a fascist mindset. Far right. So anti-fascist means Antifa will be far left. Now, obviously, their origin can be seen or origin. So these are anarchical movements. They don't have any leader per se, or they don't have a proper organization per se. But these are the movements which saw more of visibility during the Black Lives Movement. So Donald Trump ने क्या बोला भाई कि भाई we will ban this, designate this Antifa as a terrorist organization. So it's an anti-fascist political movement comprised of the diverse array of autonomous groups aimed to achieve their objectives through the use of both non-violent and violent means. That means around 80%, 90% people, let us say, they follow the non-violent path, but some of them follow the violent path. So sometimes if they get into the violent path, then they are criticized for doing so. And that gives a excuse for the people such as Donald Trump to do their own propaganda, isn't it? Chalo. So Antifa is an anti-fascist political movement in the United States. And the next question is PAGE that we have discussed. It's a previous year question being asked in 2018. So PAGE, a united mechanism in assisting countries in transition toward greener or more inclusive economy, emerged at Earth Summit on the Sustainable Development Johannesburg, that is the Rio Plus 10 Summit. Then United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, that is Rio de Janeiro, that is Rio Plus 20. Then United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change, that is with respect to the Paris Agreement, UNFCCC. And then lastly, World Sustainable Development Summit in New Delhi. Now, when that question has come, let me tell you, this was a no-no question or a tough question. Not even I won't try to put it into a strive as well. But the significance of it, or how can you eliminate options to get to the right answer? Let us think over it. Now, for example, this question was asked in 2018. At that time, this particular summit was very famous. So especially remember, I'm telling in the future context, whenever there is a summit on sustainable development, or the summit there is on climate change, or summit on the biodiversity, so the outcomes of it, any organization is being formed, very, very important organization, especially if India decides to participate in it. If especially, for example, PAGE has only 20 countries. So India is one of the countries. That is why PAGE becomes important. But obviously we can say so after the UPSC has given the question. So we can call ourselves armchair analysis, or we can say, okay, you must have prepared. No, it was not like that. It was a tough question when it was asked. But in the future, how can we tackle such questions? How can we prepare ourselves going forward? For example, any summit has happened. Let's say WTO summit is going to happen in 2021. So we need to know everything which has happened in that particular summit. Everything means everything significant. Now, for example, when this question has come, if you have read all the points with respect to 2016 summit, you can eliminate it. If you have read everything with respect to the Paris summit, you can eliminate it, because these two summits were recent summits. I agree that this summit was very old. Rio 20 happened in 2012, and they asked the question in 2018. Very tough. But yes, you have increased the probability of getting your answer right. You have eliminated the two options out of it. So that is the idea. The idea is not to reach to the correct answer, but to eliminate the wrong answer as far as possible. That no, this did not happen here for sure. Because ultimately, I'll repeat many times that ultimately, even the best to best aspirants knows only 50 questions at max. Then from 50 to 80 journey, they have to select out of 2, out of 3. They have to apply the calculated guesses, calculated intuitions, and these things happen, right? So this is what we have to improve. Chalo. So the answer is obviously Rio 20, because we have spent a lot of time in discussing the page. It's a previous year question, then obviously we are supposed to know it. We are supposed to know the strategy. We are supposed to know the mindset of the UPSC, how they're setting up the questions. Let us discuss the next question. Which of the following Bhakti saint propagated the theory of Begumpura? Begumpura, or the word without sorrow. It's a good idea. You can use this idea into your essay ethics as well. Very good idea. Now, from the name itself, if you know a bit of Hindi, Begum. Gum means pain. Begum means no pain. And Pura means place. So a place without the pain. So basically the kind of thing that Buddha has said. Buddha ne bola nahi tha. Buddha has said the life is full of suffering. But obviously he talked about a place of bliss, that you can reach the place of bliss. The Mahavira talked about the place of bliss, isn't it? So that place of bliss described by a Bhakti saint, that is Begumpura. Who was him? Very important questions. Such questions you can expect. Okay? Such questions you can expect on Bhakti saints. Very important topic, Bhakti saints. So the idea of the Begumpura was given by the Sant Ravidas. Sant Ravidas, who was a disciple of the Ramanand, who himself was a Bhakti saint. A lot of disciples of the Ramanand. For example, Kabir was said to be the disciple of Ramanand. Mirabai was said to be the disciple of the Ramanand. A lot of disciples of the Ramanand. Now, obviously, from the Begumpura, the word Begumpura, the place with no pain. So a place that people live in harmony without any sort of discrimination. So he has a pious desire to create a society no one face discrimination on the basis of caste, creed, social status, where people pay no taxes, enjoy the freedom to freely migrate to the places of choice. So basically everything given in the constitution. Place with no pain, no taxes, no cares on his body, and all these things. So the idea was given by the Sant Ravidas, Guru Ravidas. So you need to remember the time period in which he lived. So from 1450 to 1520. So he did not see the Babar. So he lived in the Lodi era. So, okay, because now such questions are being asked. For example, they'll give the name and they'll ask whether he lived in the times of the Akbar or not, whether he lived in the times of the Humayun or not. So you need to remember the timelines of it. Okay? Chalo. So the answer is obviously Ravidas. Next question is CDRI. Very, very important topic. I was expecting question this year, but didn't came. So with reference to the second initiative, that is Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI, which of the following statements are correct? It's an initiative of the G20. Coalition aimed to help develop disaster resilient technologies and mechanism for integrating the risk reduction in the infrastructure financing. The secretariat of the CDRI will be in New Delhi. Pause the video and try to answer the question. CDRI is very, very important, because after the International Solar Alliance, it's a second organization, international organization that is pitched by India, which has the secretariat in India itself. For example, the secretariat of the ISA is in Gurugram. The secretariat of the CDRI is in New Delhi. So the third statement is right. Third statement is right, then this becomes wrong, this becomes wrong. It automatically, you have to choose between 1 and 2. Okay? Now, second statement is a very rhetorical statement. Obviously, that has to be right. And if that is right, then answer becomes 2 and 3. So it's an initiative basically done by the Modi ji. Modi ji has started this initiative. So it was launched in 2019 at the United Nations Climate Summit at New York. And Secretariat at New Delhi, and is supported by the United Nations Office for the Disaster Risk Reduction. This is DRR, mean Disaster Risk Reduction. Okay? As of 2021, 19 members are there. These are the list of the countries which are part of the CDRI. Obviously, the name itself is coalition. That means it's a coalition of the United Nations, multilateral development banks, private sector member country, academia, industry. So they'll come together, they'll work for the technology, policy development, infrastructure, investment, infrastructure which is disaster resilient. So it aims that in the 2 to 3 years, this is the idea. So they say the threefold impact it will have. This is the line given in your economic survey. So first is considerable change in the member policies framework. For example, helping the member countries to frame the policies in which the first time when they are creating the infrastructure, it should be disaster resilient. Next, the future infrastructure investment, and third, which is disaster resilient, obviously. And third, reduction in the economic losses from the climate related events and the natural disasters. So these are the threefold objectives which are being discussed by the CDRI. So last year we have discussed CDRI because that year UK has decided to be the first co-chair. India is the chair, and so CDRI is co-chaired by India and the representative of another national government nominated by the rotation for 2 years. So last year UK was organized as the first co-chair of India-led climate change initiative. Chalo. This is given in our economic survey last year, and this year economic survey will also have the information. For example, this is the line that I have explained. Okay? And thus it becomes important. So answer is 2 and 3. Chalo. The last question, consider the following architectural monument, arrange them chronologically. You have to arrange these architectural monument chronologically. It's an easy question, but very important question. Chronology based question. If you have seen, I focus a lot on the chronology based questions. These are very, very important for UPSC. So Humayun Tomb, Alai Darwaja, and Bibi Ka Maqbara. Pause the video and try to answer the question. It's a relatively easy question. Now, if you remember just one thing, Humayun Tomb, from the name itself, it is clear that obviously it will be near to Humayun. If you just remember that Bibi Ka Maqbara, Bibi means wife. So whose wife? Aurangzeb's wife. So if you see that obviously 1, then 2 somewhere, and then 3, because 2 can be here, 2 can be here, because after 1 3 will come. So 1 and 3. So this is wrong. This can be a possibility. This can be a possibility. This is wrong. So you have eliminated the 2 options. Now out of these options, 1 will be 3. 1 will be correct. Okay? Alai Darwaja, it was one of the first architecture to be built in the Indo-Islamic style by the Alauddin Khilji in the red sandstone. So it is made inside the Qutub complex. You can see Qutub Minar, right? Last time we have discussed what? Iron Pillar of Mehrauli, Delhi. So iron pillar is also in this Qutub complex. So these are together. So this is Alai Darwaja being constructed in the, it is also known as the gate of the Alauddin, Alai Darwaja. So southern gateway of the Quwwat Islam Mosque within the Qutub Minar complex. Indo-Islamic architecture, first Indian monument having been built with the Islamic method, and it's a World Heritage Site. Chalo. So 1311 it was built. Next, Humayun Tomb, very beautiful, really very beautiful. If whenever you go to Delhi, a lot of you must have visited Delhi, please find time to visit Humayun Tomb. My personal favorite in Delhi. So when you go to the Humayun Tomb, it's such a beautiful. I like it better than Taj Mahal, to be honest. Chalo. So it was constructed in 1565 to 1572, constructed by the wife of the Humayun, that is Begum. Okay. It is the first garden tomb in the subcontinent having the Charbagh garden style. So this is the 4 gardens. So this is the style that is followed in the Humayun's tomb. It's a World Heritage Site. In 1993, it is declared as the World Heritage Site. Next is Bibi Ka Maqbara. So Bibi Ka Maqbara, also known as the Taj of the Deccan. You can see it is similar to the Taj Mahal, but very poorly. It's called poor man's Taj Mahal. It's situated in Aurangabad. Started by, commissioned by Aurangzeb in the memory of his wife. One of the largest structure that was created by the Aurangzeb. Now, when he constructed this Bibi Ka Maqbara, he did not like it. It was not very beautiful. Hence, he made one more, that is Pearl Mosque in Delhi, small and elegant. That is Moti Masjid within the Red Fort complex. The Moti Masjid constructed by Aurangzeb. So these are the two major monuments being created by the Aurangzeb. First is Bibi Ka Maqbara and the second is Moti Masjid. Okay? It was constructed in 1559 and 1660. Okay, so the answer will be obviously Humayun's tomb, then first Alai Darwaza, then Humayun tomb, then Bibi Ka Maqbara 213. So with this, we finish our session. We are done with our first session. In the second session, we'll talk about, for example, we'll talk about the free flow of data. We'll talk about the BIMSTEC. We'll talk about something related to the individual, some country specific things. So till then, bye-bye. Revise well and prepare well. Thank you, everyone.